Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It is a pleasure for me to welcome you to our first webinar dedicated to Raphael on the occasion of the 500th anniversary of this master of our Renaissance. Our conference of today's conference is part of a cycle which we organized together with the Gemäldegalerie and the Kupferstichkabinett Berlin, which have set up two important exhibitions dedicated to Raphael. We will hear more about them thanks to the presence of Dr. Dagmar Korbacher, director of the Kupferstichkabinett, who is among us today. Our today's evening guest is Dr. Angelamaria Aceto, research assistant at the Ashmolean Museum of Oxford. Thank you, Angelamaria Aceto, for joining us tonight. I would like to briefly introduce you to her CV. She received her education as an art historian at the University Federico II in Naples and completed an MA at the UCL, focusing on graphic arts. She then joined the Department of Prints and Drawings at the British Museum as a Michael Bromberg Fellow, and subsequently the Ashmolean Museum as a print room assistant and then print room supervisor. She was appointed research assistant on the Lever-Hulme funded research devoted to Raphael drawings. She will talk today about her researches into Raphael's drawings and the media it used to reach the outstanding results which we can admire today. I wish you a good evening and I give the floor to Dagmar Korbacher. Thank you, Dagmar.
Buonasera, good evening. My name is Dagmar Korbacher, and on behalf of the Staatliche Museen zu Berlin, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to everyone who joins us tonight in discovering what fascinating a draftsman Raphael was. I'm very grateful to my colleague Angelamaria, who will be our guide in this virtual discovery tour tonight. I'm also extremely grateful to the Italian Cultural Institute here in Berlin, our wonderful Istituto Italiano di Cultura, who organized a really informative and entertaining lecture series with great speakers on various aspects of Raphael's art. And due to the special circumstances we all find ourselves in, this lecture series didn't start as planned. So I'm all the more happy that Michela De Riso and Stephanie Hamm found a way to make tonight's lecture happen in spite of everything. Thank you. This lecture series was actually designed to accompany, Michela mentioned it, two exhibitions, one in the Gemäldegalerie and one in the Kupferstichkabinett, both entitled Raphael in Berlin. The exhibitions are currently closed to the public and we don't know yet when they can open again. But I'm quite optimistic that eventually we will be able to see Raphael's paintings and drawings in Berlin again. When this happens, in the Gemäldegalerie, you will be able to admire 5 Madonna paintings from the Gemäldegalerie's own collection and one from the National Gallery in London, all works of intimate beauty and delicacy by the young Raphael. While in the small but important group of Raphael's own drawings in the Berlin Kupferstichkabinett, this show embraces his entire working life and all the drawing media he used. As I said, the Kupferstichkabinett's collection of Raphael's drawings is actually quite small, comprising 8 drawings, but interestingly enough, back in 1840, the Berlin museums had the chance to acquire a huge and important collection of the master's drawings. However, they decided otherwise, bought plaster casts instead. But luckily, the important collection of Raphael's drawings ended up in the museum about two decades later, if I'm not mistaken, around 1860. And it was bought for the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, making it the largest and most important collection of Raphael's drawings worldwide. And Angelamaria, who is our guest tonight, is so lucky to work there. So as you may have understood by now, I'm speaking here as a drawings person. And as such, I'm very much looking forward to Angelamaria's talk on Raphael's draftsmanship. Her lecture will be a perfect way to ease the waiting until we can see the original drawings in our museums again. It is the art of drawing, more than any other art, that allows us to be close to the artist, to Raphael, when he is striving for timeless beauty and perfection. It is in his drawings that his ingenuity and innovative power becomes particularly striking, even 500 years after his death. And in those 500 years that have passed since his death until tonight's webinar, connecting Oxford and Berlin to Urbino, Florence, and Rome, Raphael has always inspired artists, poets, art historians, collectors, kings, art lovers, and actually pretty much everyone, not only in the UK, Germany, and Italy. And it is his history of 5 centuries of inspiration that makes Raphael a true European. So thank you, Angelamaria, for joining us tonight. I'm looking forward to your talk.
Many thanks for this introduction, and many thanks for the invitation. It is really delightful to be here with you today. So what I decided to do is to present very much a version of the paper I had originally planned to deliver in Berlin and Dresden, a somewhat simplified version which is more suitable to this format. It will be a very object-based lecture, so let's sharpen our eyes and begin. So I thought that it would be nice to structure the presentation around 3 case studies, 3 reading exercises, so to speak, all of which will be underpinned by a common methodological approach. What I would like to show you today is how the scrutiny of the materiality of drawings may contribute to enrich our understanding of working processes, but also of broader themes which have preoccupied Raphael scholars for some time. So, first and foremost, perhaps we need to clarify the concept of materiality in drawing, and I will do so through this slide, which shows 2 images in transmitted light, so literally 2 drawings placed onto a light box, so that the light from the back highlights the structure of the paper. And so materiality embraces not only the media, but also the support. So the paper, which is made of chain, lead lines, watermark, indelible signs left by the time. In this case, you can see here how the paper has how the iron wool ink, which is a type of commonly found and rather cheap ink at the time, has eaten through the paper, and also signs of collecting. I will show you one example of how collecting can really affect our perception of drawing. Over the last 30 years or so, drawing scholarship has more and more paid attention to the materials and techniques of drawings, although perhaps not enough. And this is perhaps true particularly true for Raphael. Raphael as a draftsman really offers, I went forward too quickly, really offers an extraordinary case study. Like very few of his contemporaries, he used every medium and technique he had available at the time. And the slide just shows you the beauty, the range of drawings, the diversity of effects that he's able to obtain. Of each of these medium, he exploited them, he pushed boundaries. And you have pen and ink here, natural and fabricated chalks, charcoals, lead point, blind stylus, and indeed the technique of metal point, which is a quintessentially Quattrocento technique, which Raphael, unlike his contemporaries, continued to employ well into the 16th century. I hope you can see. So this was the first slide I commented upon. This shows very much the structure of the paper. So when I was talking about the materiality, it was I was referring to the medium, but also the structure, so the chain lines, the laid lines, and the watermark. And also I was referring to the condition. As you can see, the paper is broken in some parts. This is because of the iron wool ink with time breaks through the paper. This is just a lovely slide here that shows you the range of materials and techniques that Raphael used throughout his career. So examples of charcoal, chalk, pen and ink, brush drawings, red chalk, and metal point. I've included quite a few examples of metal point, which is a quintessentially Quattrocento technique, which is actually, as I was saying, very interestingly, Raphael uses well into the 16th century. And in fact, one could fill a lecture, a 40 minutes lecture, just with talking about Raphael and metal point. And yet, apart from some isolated case studies, relatively little attention has been paid to the materiality of his drawings. Rather, Raphael's scholarship has been concerned with building his oeuvre, and this is understandable. So we tried over the decades to answer questions of connoisseurship. So, for example, in relation to his early and late drawings, is this a drawing by Raffaello, Perugino? Is this a drawing by Raphael or Giulio Romano? Or indeed questions of function, what is drawing is made for. So very much drawing as a document towards a finished work of art, as a stepping stone. And these are indeed fundamental questions, fundamental taxonomic approaches, which in a way, these approaches have been and still are actually necessary to organize the visual material that has come down to us. And indeed, these approaches have very much enriched our understanding of Raphael as a painter, as an architect, as an expert of antiquities, but in a way that have not fully answered the question of Raphael as a draftsman. What we are still lacking is a comprehensive study, a catalog raisonné, so to speak, that addresses the question of how Raphael drew and why the drawings look the way they do. So what I would like to do in the next half an hour is very much to give you a taste of what we can learn from this approach. I guess what I would like you to, my aim is just for you to leave this half an hour talk with the idea that drawing is not different from a painting, is not less complex from a painting in terms of its materiality. The drawing has layers. I will use a few times this concept of stratigraphy, which is a term I borrowed from science, from geology, which I think it conveys very well the idea the drawing has strata, layers, which are often imperceptible to the naked eye. We therefore have to rely sometimes on sophisticated technologies, but not always. I don't want to discourage, if there are any students listening, I don't want to discourage students. Sometimes our eye with very simple tools such as a torch can be enough to detect, to unveil stratigraphy in drawings. Two techniques which are particularly revealing in Raphael draftsmen are Raphael drawings are lead point and blind stylus. And lead point, you are able to detect it easily on drawings. I'm referring to this grey line used for underdrawing, which is very much has the aspect of graphite. It looks like graphite. It's very soft, can be freely used onto the unprepared piece of paper. Blind stylus on the right-hand side of the screen is slightly more complex to detect. What I'm referring to, I hope you can see, are those lines engraved, grooved inside the paper. What you're looking at on the right hand side, it's in fact a photograph in raking light. So light shown from the sides, which is a simple, very simple tool that really unveils the stratigraphy, in particularly blind stylus. I hope you can see this line around the head of Christ or the volute here. So you literally engrave the piece of paper. It's something you can try easily yourself. Raphael, the tool was made of metal or perhaps bone, wood. I do think that Raphael used a metal point in particular. So a metal point that leaves no deposit of material, no visible mark. So now the first broader theme I'd like to address is Raphael and Florence, and particularly Raphael and Florence prior to his arrival there towards the end of 1504, when we agree he must have settled for the next 4 years before going to Rome to work for Julius II. And this is a topic that scholars have touched upon, but perhaps not sufficiently. And I'd like to do so through the stratigraphic reading of these drawing here at the Ashmolean Museum. So we will stay a little bit with the theme of the Virgin and Child, also to dialogue with the exhibition in Berlin. This is a tiny drawing, and I hope you can see my hands here. It's a very, very tiny drawing, and I think it is important to get a sense of the size of this little sketch and to understand how much is happening in a tiny, tiny sketch. The drawing has been long recognized as a preparatory sketch for the painting you see here on the right-hand side of the screen, which is today in Pasadena, California. And so I will address the topic on Raphael and Florence through the stratigraphic reading of this sheet. What you're seeing here, it's the same drawing under a different light. It's a picture taken with a sophisticated type of technology called reflectance transformation imaging, which allows to obtain high resolution imaging in raking light. What this image has made clear, this is already in 2016-17 when we worked on our exhibition here at the Ashmolean of Raphael's drawing, is the extent with which the blind stylus was used on this tiny drawing. Katie Parker had indeed noticed the presence of blind stylus in 1956 when he catalogued this little drawing. But what was not clear to him is the density. And again, I'll now use the mouse, and I hope you can see those engraved lines on the piece of paper. So these triangular shapes here, it's nothing else than the hand of the Virgin. So if we go backwards, so he drew initially the hand here. And again, you can see the arm of the child. But above all, what this drawing really unveils is a change of mind, a pentimento. As you can see, the head of the child was initially swiftly drawn so that he looked towards the book. But then something changes all of a sudden. Raphael turns to pen and ink. Raphael turns to a medium, an indelible medium, and introduces a very small but dramatic change. So all of a sudden, the Virgin and child's gaze meet. They look at each other. And so the image is imbued with human, earthly qualities, with life. This is one of the greatest achievements of Raphael's treatment of the Virgin and child. So the unveiling of this underdrawing, I'm hoping, will contribute a little bit to the question of Raphael's visual culture before 1504. That is one of the least documented periods of his career, and to the question of dating of this drawing. Now, the picture and related drawing have been dated to around 1502, 1503. In fact, a German scholar, Jörg Meyer zu Kapellen, I hope I've not mispronounced too much his name, suggested a slight later dating towards the end of the Umbrian period, so towards 1503, 1504. And the scholar suggested also very cautiously that the Virgin, the child in particular, may be modeled on that of Leonardo's Benoit Madonna. So to a certain extent, implying a knowledge of Leonardo's work before 1504. And in effect, the stratigraphic reading of our drawings seems very much to encourage the idea of a first, if not yet utterly transformative encounter with the art of Leonardo, and not just with his paintings, but also with his drawings. And in this regard, I'd like to suggest this comparison. So in the middle and on the right-hand side, there are tiny details from a larger sheet at the British Museum. That have been connected, in fact, the execution of the Benoit Madonna. And you can see that in a manner akin to the Ashmolean drawing, here Leonardo is superimposing two ideas. He's first using lead point, and then the other idea is in pen and ink. And Raphael, like Leonardo, is facing the same problem, the same compositional question: how to articulate the interaction among three elements: the mother, the child, and the symbolic object. So Leonardo here is, the Virgin Leonardo is holding a flower, in Raphael, the book. And the sketch eventually on the right-hand side shows Leonardo achieving the same solution, the same closely approximates Raphael in both in form and content. And I hope you see that the similarities between these two drawings in particular are not superficial. Raphael with this drawing shows a deep understanding of Leonardo's working processes in drawings, of the possibilities of drawing and the tools available. And ultimately, I hope you can really see the freedom of expression, the tools like lead point and blind stylus entitled. And crucially, this manner of working that we see here is not any longer that of Perugino, who had been Raphael's mentor in the 1490s, and who in drawing worked within established formulae. Perugino obviously is there in the background. Rather, the drawing shows an artist who's injecting new life into established motifs. An artist already receptive to novelties. We already see a very young, talented and ambitious boy. Talent and ambition are the very two qualities that define the young Raphael, probably studying the most intimate drawings by Leonardo before he settled in Florence, literally as though someone was studying your private diary. Well, several could have been the opportunities of encounter between the two. Scholars have perhaps rightly suggested that Raphael traveled to Florence in around 1502, undocumented travels. Perugino also held a workshop both in Perugia and Florence. Donato Bramante was in fact had been Raphael's mentor in many respects in question of architecture, was very close to Leonardo. Donato Bramante was from Urbino, and he was in the 1480s very close to Leonardo in Milan. So it's not surprising, I think, that a work like this one shows an understanding of Leonardo, and but also the drawing betrays perhaps even the knowledge of late Quattrocento sculpture. And I like to suggest very quickly this comparison. At the type of sculpture, there was very much the threshold of early Renaissance sculpture and the maniera moderna, and a moment when the dialogue between painting and sculpture was very, very, very intense. Now, what you have here, it's a very beautiful relief by Benedetto da Maiano at the Metropolitan Museum, which must have been particularly popular. It's known in various replicas. This is a work by an artist who trained the great Michelangelo, with whom Raphael would enter in open competition once in Florence. I hope I've highlighted in particular here this comparison, this detail, just the way the child is sitting on the cushion, but also the way the drapery falls in between the leg and on the pillow seems, in Raphael, seems very much a quotation from this painting. And it is almost as though Raphael was already on the track of Michelangelo, of the Florentine artist, whether consciously or unconsciously. His ambition, his intelligence takes him to emulate the avant-garde, the same models that had shaped the young Michelangelo. So the Virgin of Pasadena and the stratigraphy of the Virgin of Pasadena, not showing a work not as a simple Umbrian work, but very much as a proto-Florentine essay by the master, as a transitional work. And what clearly emerges here and so early in Raphael's career is, in fact, his renowned syncretism, his ability to synthesize, to appropriate, to bring together and to appropriate the visual stimuli that surrounded him, a quality of his art that was famously captured by Vasari in his quote, which I've included at the bottom left of the screen, prese da tutti il meglio. The transformative impact of Raphael's encounter with Florentine art is now evident in two drawings, again at the Ashmolean Museum of about 1505. And these are the two studies for the Virgin of the Goldfinch, which I'm showing you here. So we will stay again with the theme of the Virgin Child. Here Raphael is clearly in full competition with Leonardo, but also with Michelangelo. And what I would like you to do here is to accompany me in a little archaeological exercise, so to speak. So these are two separate studies. If you come to the printed drawing room here at the Ashmolean, I will be showing you this drawing on mounted in two different passepartouts. These drawings have been in the collection of the Ashmolean Museum since 1846, and obviously they've been widely studied because they are the only two preparatory drawings for the Cardellino painting in Florence. And yet something quite interesting very recently emerged. Very careful scrutiny of the paper reveals later restoration, and you can perhaps see that already here and here and this area, but let's move forward. This is perhaps clearer in the next slide. Okay, from the side, this is clear. Sorry, I wanted perhaps to comment on the verso first. So this is the recto of our two drawings. This is the verso, so there are very rough architectural sketches on one side, and what you see on the verso of the other drawing is in fact a blank piece of paper because it's covered. But if you then look at the picture in transmitted light, here we go, you can see very clearly some rather rough, perhaps less exciting sketches, but what you can see also very clear are the addition to the paper. And here we go, both the images in raking light and in transmitted light. So here the additions are very, very, very clear. And I guess I wanted to show you also this image because it's a kind of interesting, sad at the same time. You can see what the drawing, once it was cropped, what was reduced to a drawing that we that is a masterpiece, but it was ruined for reason to input in fact on the market, and I will explain you why. So I hope you can see, sorry, this is not very easy with the mouse, it's very sensitive. I hope you can see from these images that the way that the images were cut are very similar. They both cropped, both show curvy line. And so it became clear back in December when we looked at these drawings that in fact the two were once united, joined together in one piece of paper. So if there are any doubts, the little slide at the bottom center shows that once the two sheets are joined back together, the chain lines correspond, they run through. So no doubt that Raphael drew the two images on perhaps 1/2 of an imperial size. The reconstruction, I think, very much enriched our understanding of the working process behind the Cardellino Virgin. Once the drawings have been joined, we can really get a sense of how quickly the idea for the painting must have evolved. Indeed, an artist can return to the same piece of paper after some time. We all do it, whether we are drawing or we are writing. But here there is a real sense that the two compositional studies are very close to each other chronologically. The impression is that they were made in the same drawing session. They shared the same ink, the same graphic style, and yet display different ideas on the same piece of paper. And it's possible that Raphael began with this image, so in portrait orientation, and then turned the piece of paper 90 degrees and drew this other group, which approximates is much closer to the final painting. But also, what we can sorry, the reason why I should say that the reason why these two drawings obviously were cropped was to create two drawings from one for the market to be sold. And this must have happened quite early in their life history, because both sheets, you can see 1 and 2 carry 2 collector's marks, the Viti Ansaldi collector's marks that were possibly, very possibly inscribed already in the 17th century. But we can also additionally better understand the function of Raphael's blind stylus on these two drawings, and I'm going to show you one of the two images. So here you can see how an image that has been apparently swiftly drawn, quickly drawn, actually hides, again, layers. I've gone over, in this case, with pen and ink. I've gone over the blind stylus with pen and ink, so you can see all these blue marks around the head, around the foot. What Raphael is doing is minimally and schematically placing some marks in order to place the image, to fix the image before turning to a medium which can be deleted. And in a way, he's also marking the section of the paper so that he has the remaining bit available to continue to work. So the economy of means. Blind stylus helped him in his creativity, but also it was a very economical, very helpful tool during the creative process. And once the original situation is restored, we can now appreciate better the sketches on the verso. The reason why obviously these two drawings look different in color is because Parker 517, so the drawing at the top, is seen in transmitted light. Perhaps these are less exciting, slightly less exciting drawings, but they're nevertheless very, very important, because we only have a very small amount, a handful of drawing, architectural sketches by Raphael, and this is one of them. Raphael shaped the history, architectural history in the Western world, and yet we rely on very, very little visual evidence. So for art historians, these sketches are very, very important. For example, these arch that run across the paper of 517 that made absolutely no sense, all of a sudden has meaning, because it's nothing else than the continuation of the arch of the interior of these chapel, or perhaps church. So this is the capitol, and this is the pilaster, and this is where the arch continues. We don't know, it's not clear yet. It would seem to be that these drawings are perhaps memories of buildings by Francesco di Giorgio Martini, perhaps San Bernardino in Urbino, in particular, this plan. So I hope with these two drawings, I really wanted to give you a sense of how complex drawings can be, and particularly Raphael's drawings, the impression that we have something done quickly, swiftly. Actually, it doesn't quite work with Raphael. I wanted to take you through one very last case study and particularly address the role of memory in Raphael draftsmanship. So Raphael drawing and the role of memory. And I'd like to do so through the reading of these rather important, rather splendid drawing here at the Ashmolean Museum, depicting a coronation of the Virgin with saints and a little angel here, which again you can't see because it's drawn in blind stylus. So a space which apparently is blank is not blank. There is a rather beautiful drawing of an angel seated on the steps of this drawing of the throne. The drawing effectively illustrates how deeply embedded Raphael's art was with memories from his time in the Marche, in Urbino Federico da Montefeltro, whose patronage had attracted the best artists available at the time. Raphael appropriates as a child the visual world that surrounded him, additionally stimulated obviously by his father Giovanni Santi, who himself was a court painter, a painter of not great skill, but a very intelligent man, as Vasari says. Now, discussion on this drawing over the years has exclusively focused on its function. The drawing has been very much as a work documenting the making of the Vatican coronation. Here it is. This is a painting which was originally commissioned by Raphael by the Clarisse di Monteluce, so we are very a few kilometers away from Perugia, but eventually was realized by Giulio Romano and Giovan Francesco Penni only after the master's death. Now, one aspect that one should emphasize in discussing this sheet is if this is indeed a drawing made for the Monteluce Commission, as scholars we agree that this is the case. Well, Raphael is essentially breaking the terms of the contract with the sisters of Monteluce. The sisters in December 1505 had explicitly asked Raphael to follow Ghirlandaio's coronation and army. So here it is, an earlier 15th century model which became very, very popular. The commission dragged for several years, obviously. So the drawing here, the dating is still discussed. We are somewhere between 1512 and 1516. But you can see how in this drawing, Raphael is dissatisfied with the earlier visual tradition. And so in this drawing, he tries something different. So again, he began to work with blind stylus. You can see how densely the image is placed with this invisible tool. And then he, after having placed the figures, he builds around them the architectural throne, a highly imaginative architectural throne. A detail which in itself charged the composition with a completely new atmosphere, which overcame the medieval iconography as we've seen it in Ghirlandaio's painting. And to me, the architectural throne is the real protagonist of this drawing rather than the figures. If you play a little bit with the image and you trying to imagine it without the throne, what you have is a rather traditional Central Italian coronation. Raphael here is playing with the antique vocabulary in a way that he does things in drawing that he can't do in painting. He's sort of now by now he has absorbed, he's been in Rome for 4 years or so, and he has absorbed the antique. And this is the most remarkable aspect of the drawing. He's engaging in a very profound dialogue with an illustrious model, and this is the Pala Pesaro di Giovanni by Giovanni Bellini, so the coronation of the Virgin in Pesaro, still today in Pesaro. And Raphael must have known such a painting. This is one of masterpieces of Italian art. The painting hung since the 40s, 70s on the main altar of the Church of San Francesco in Pesaro. And this is just a few kilometers away from Urbino, so not difficult to reach for Raphael. And scholarship has speculated, this is especially looking at painting, whether Raphael might have traveled to Venice. A scholar, Mulazzini, in 1986, underlined the importance of this painting in the art of Raphael, without, however, providing any cogent visual evidence. And I think this is a gap that perhaps this comparison now fill. And that Raphael must have had direct knowledge of this painting. It's again not difficult to contemplate, and after all, Giovanni Bellini was among those artists singled out by Giovanni Santi in his Cronaca Rimata, so alongside Perugino, alongside Leonardo. And I hope you can see with me that this is not just a superficial record, a superficial memory. It's not just that he's reproposing in the pose of the Virgin, the Virgin and the Christ, but Raphael shows to have deeply understood Bellini's painting, which for the time was utterly revolutionary. For the first time, the coronation was imbued with earthly and human values. It was not anymore the event that took place in the heavens, as we've seen in the coronation of Ghirlandaio, being the culmination of the Assumption of the Virgin. And it's also given a contemporary, classicizing archaeological content. And this is again the throne, the same throne that Raphael reproposes in this specific drawing. There is no derivation from this drawing. There is a copy or a later drawing by Raphael, which is in the same format, but the throne is actually much more banal. It looks like a modern 16th century throne. This is here Raphael is really experimenting, is daring. And I've been wondering again, what does this mean? How can we address broader question from this evidence? You know, I've been wondering whether perhaps this is an attempt by Raphael to persuade the sisters of Monteluce to accept a more modern design. Raphael didn't really like, I think, Ghirlandaio's coronation and Nanni. You know, he respected it, obviously, but he wanted to do something more modern. And a project that recalls an equally prestigious model, the Pala Pesaro di Bellini, located in a Franciscan context, a model provided with auctoritas, the authority. And obviously Raphael is not just, Raphael is copying, is not, Raphael is emulating, has appropriated in this particular drawing the model. The painting, as we've seen, was eventually realized by Raphael's followers with an iconography which followed much more closely the 400 15th century model. Clearly, it was through the act of drawing, in the intimacy of drawing, the intimacy that drawing entitled to, that Raphael could, more than anywhere else, more than in painting, freely experiment, recall from memory, and challenge traditions. And I think this is an excellent example in this regard. Thank you for listening.
So thank you, Angelamaria, for your presentation. And I would welcome questions if there are any. You can use the tool Q&A, which you can find here in Zoom. And there is a question from Dagmar Korbacher. I would invite Dagmar Korbacher to appear in her video and to directly put the question to Angelamaria.
Thank you, Angelamaria, for this wonderful talk. I really thoroughly enjoyed it because it also showed the benefits really of such a rich and wonderful collection that you have there in Oxford. And I was asking myself, did Raphael use specific techniques like, for example, red chalk for specific topics, for example, nude studies, or did he change?
This is a very, so let's go back to the initial to the sort of the slide where I had all the drawings. I think red chalk is a tool that Raphael used very much for figure studies. I don't know if did I have exam, yes, for figure studies, but also for drapery studies. You have a fantastic example here. He rarely use it in a linear manner. Raphael really appreciated the earthly qualities of red chalk, so to speak. And he used it, you can really see sometimes his fingers smudging the medium. This is an example for a drapery study, but also we have nice example of figure studies, arms. Actually, no, there are a number of examples where you use it in a very linear manner. I think it's quite difficult to pin down how an artist may use that particular tool in relation to a particular drawing. Sometimes there is a level of, sometimes what you have at your disposal. I think, for example, pen and ink was a tool they used when you wanted to reach clarity. And you have a nice example here. This is a drawing in Frankfurt, for example. But I would say mostly for drapery, figure studies. I don't know what's your whether you have any particular idea, whether you think there was any specific use of red chalk.
No, I just was wondering, you know, these later nudes using red chalk corresponds so well to the nude study in terms of color and
this
so
is
on.
I mean red chalk will become then the tool for nude studies later on in the 17th century, and artists later on were looking obviously at Raphael's drawings, but he used it for all sorts of purposes. I'm thinking of studies in Vienna, for example, where he's studying literally just one arm or one face, and he used it in a very linear manner. Or this drapery you have here on the slide on the right-hand side is obviously for the extremely sculptural drapery. I mean, the same question is, for example, for metal point. You never use it for one single thing. You use it for conventional studies, you use it for figure studies, use it for quick sketching. You have a drawing here, a drawing for the Piccolomini soldiers. He is swiftly sketching, which is something he's learned probably from looking at Filippino Lippi's drawings, for example. He's very free, so it's very difficult to label Raphael. This is, I think, the answer. Very, very difficult to label Raphael.
Thank you.
So there are some other questions. The first one from Luana Brandi. She asks if the use of blank stylus was common among artists at the time, or if it could be defined as a Raphael technique?
This is a very good question. I think blind stylus goes back a long time. I mean, Perugino used blind stylus. Michelangelo, Leonardo made large use of blind stylus for all sorts of purposes. But Raphael, the way Raphael uses the freedom which Raphael uses, I tried, for example, to compare it to Michelangelo. Raphael uses it much more in a freer manner. Michelangelo often uses it to place the image, whereas Raphael used it very much in a creative manner. But it was a rather common, it was a very economical tool. You used blind stylus to save, to experiment freely, and also what you did on the piece of paper did not interfere with your later drawing in a way. When you moved onto a different medium, pen and ink, chalk, there was no interference, and this is why it was favored so much by artists. But my feeling is that obviously it's always very difficult to compare Michelangelo and Raphael's. Raphael died much earlier. He lived only 37 years, but in comparison, if you compare the drawings from the same chronological span, the use of Raphael's blind style is much more free. But the technique goes back to the 15th century, and we have examples, as I said, Perugino's drawings, where the tool is used very much to place the image, not to waste paper. I hope that answer.
Yeah, thank you. And then a comment from Bjorn, who thanks you and us for this perspective on the work which you have offered. He says it's very inspiring to see the variety of techniques and tools that Raphael used. And then we have another question from Johannes Ampel. I found it striking. He says that he finds striking that only Raphael draws the Virgin and Christ literally at eye level, looking at each other, while Ghirlandaio and Bellini place the Virgin slightly lower than the Christ. And the question is, does this indicate a new revolutionary perspective on the relationship between men and women in Raphael's art?
No, I don't think there's any gender-related question here. I think it's what Raphael does. It's looking at the world around him and life and other models, other ways, in particular sculpture, as I said, with Benedetto da Maiano, but also and above all Leonardo da Vinci. But it's how a child would sit on the mother's lap. This is how my daughter was sitting on my lap. So I think it's got to do with life around him. I don't think there is any gender related question there. I hope I understood the question, your question. If I haven't, you can email me and we can continue the discussion via email.
Yes. Okay, I think we have answered. And if there are any other questions, please, I invite you all to use the tool that you can find. Yes, there is one other question by Silvia Massa. Did the Ashmolean plan a campaign to analyze scientific several drawings in view of the exhibition, or individual cases were only studied?
So back in 2013, our paper conservation department selected a group of 40 drawings that they felt were, and we felt in discussion, were interesting, also not only from an art historical point of view, but there were also conservation questions that they wanted to answer. in the view of preserving these drawings for future generations. So there were 40 drawings to start with, which is 40 of the 80 drawings we have by Raphael. But over the course of the years, paper conservation, our colleagues have looked at more drawings if we wanted to, if we had any particular question. So the Virgin of Pasadena, I've showed you, that was actually one of the drawings that came out from that particular campaign. But it's never enough. It's never enough. We could do with more analysis and much more work on our drawings.
Thank you, Angelamaria, again. And if there are no questions, I would really thank you again, Angelamaria, for joining us tonight in this format. I hope you enjoyed as well, and I hope that our public enjoyed today's session. And I invite you to stay connected, because we will offer some more events in this format during this epidemiologic emergency. So thank you again, everybody, for being here tonight, connected with us through Zoom. And yes, and goodbye. And
goodbye, everyone.
Yeah, stay updated through our channels.
You can find, if you have any more questions and you want to find out more about Raphael, you can find my email address on the internet. Oh my God, don't email me too much. But anyway, see you. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.